Dangerous major Hurricane Ian is leaving Cuba on track for western Florida. Good morning on this Tuesday morning. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on dangerous, powerful Hurricane Ian. When we take a look at the Atlantic Basin, that is the only game in town. Here it is, a very powerful Category 3 hurricane moving now towards the north. Eventually it's going to move to the northeast and make landfall along the western coast of Florida sometime probably late Wednesday, early Thursday as a dangerous major hurricane. Let's get right to the latest here on our hurricane as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time from the guys at the National Hurricane Center. They're working really hard. It was at 23.0 north, 83.5 west. Winds were 115. Had been up to 125 when it made landfall in Cuba, so it weakened a little moving over land, but not much. And it's going to come right back, moving north at 10 miles per hour. And again, that motion now should start to have a north-northeastward component, and then eventually northeast, making landfall, it looks like, somewhere in the vicinity. In fact, here, I'm going to zoom in. Here, better track here because it moves so slow. It's going to make landfall somewhere between Tampa Bay, Florida, and Naples, in the general vicinity of Sarasota, Bradenton, areas there of Venice, maybe down into the Punta Gorda, Charlotte Harbor area. But again, anywhere within this cone, you guys need to be prepared for a major hurricane. We do have a lot of watches and warnings with this storm. We have a hurricane warning for western Cuba, still including the Isle of Youth. As the hurricane leaves, that should eventually be dropped. And we have a hurricane warning from Bonita Beach, Florida to the Anclote River, including Tampa Bay and the Dry Tortugas here off the Florida Keys. To say nothing of the hurricane watch, we have a hurricane watch north of the Anclote River to Suwannee River and south of Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee. So again, a lot of hurricane watches and warnings, and we still have tropical storm watches now all the way up from the Georgia coastline north to the South Santee River in South Carolina, with the expectation that this storm might actually move offshore now. That's how far east everything has been trending. Here's the latest satellite imagery. Look at this beautiful shot of this hurricane. Very dangerous. The eye is leaving Cuba and starting to clear out. It's very symmetric, more symmetric than it was yesterday when the trough first started interacting with it. Remember, it was having some shear issues and still getting its act together. I'm liking this pattern here. It looks like a very classic, very powerful major hurricane, and it is also expanding in its radius, and that could cause more problems with the wind field and the storm surge as it moves now up towards the southwest coast of Florida. And you can see the winds here around the hurricane pointing in the direction that the upper level winds want to take it, which is going to eventually be north, northeast, and then a northeast track straight across Florida. Now here's the 06Z GFS, and it brings it ashore here in the general area of Sarasota and keeps it hanging around all the way through Saturday into Sunday, finally moving out as a very dangerous hurricane. And again, we will see the 12Z models roll out pretty soon, and we'll see what they show. But as of the 6Z, it shouldn't be much different as they're starting to converge on this area between Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor for a direct hit, to say nothing of the water impact around the rest of the state. The H-Wharf model bringing it ashore as a Category 3 hurricane just north of Tampa Bay. That would drive a storm surge straight into areas there of Tampa Bay. That would be very, very dangerous if it took that track there that the H-Wharf model's showing. The European is showing it making that move directly into the area, like I said, between Tampa and Charlotte Harbor. But then look, it kind of hangs around Tampa all the way through Friday. So there is a chance this hurricane will still slow down, but maybe not before landfall, which means it has less time to weaken over the Gulf, and it will probably come ashore as a much stronger hurricane. Remember a few days ago we thought it might weaken to a Category 1 or 2. Now it's looking like it's going to be at least a Category 3 at landfall. There's the computer models. This is what we want to see. I mean, you don't want to see it on the west coast of Florida, but I mean, as a forecasting tool, you want to see them tightly clustered so that that gives us high confidence in the track. And the track is north, then northeast, then northeast, and then a slowdown, and then maybe even re-emerging here towards South Carolina and Georgia, although it would be a much weaker storm. If it's a Category 4 hurricane in Florida, it wouldn't be a Category 4 in South Carolina, but still, it's going to impact you guys, and you don't need that. There's another beautiful close-up visible satellite. Notice the eye here. In fact, if I put this little arrow on where the storm was versus where it is now, you do see a northeastward component already, unless that's my eyes doing tricks, which is possible. It's really possible. I got horrible eyesight. But it is looking like it's starting to move to the north-northeast a little, and we could see these wobbles back north, then back northeast, then back north. But those little wobbles make a big difference in the long run with where exactly this hurricane makes landfall. Here's a look at the radar, the long-range Key West radar. It's almost fully off the coastline there of Cuba, and it will begin that motion now towards the north and north-northeast. Now, if I extend a line here, I'm going to take this line and extrapolate it in this direction, let's say a little further north, right there. And we go, okay, where does that lead us? That would take landfall directly in the general vicinity of areas there of Manassoto Key, Punta Gorda, Boca Grande there. And that would be where the eye wall comes ashore with those nasty winds. But that makes no difference when it comes to the rainfall. We are predicting a lot of rain. 15, 20 inches at least. Areas here of Tampa Bay, you guys are going to get drenched, but it's going to be the whole coast. I mean, they're thinking 6 to 10 inches up towards Wilmington and Charleston and Myrtle Beach. You guys are going to get soaked as the hurricane pulls across Florida, maybe a little more north than that, but as it pulls across Florida, you guys are going to get soaked. Look at this rainfall. Now, this is the GFS model as of 6Z. Look at that, 53 inches of rain for Sarasota, Florida, 33 inches for Tampa. We would have rain records. It would be drenched, the flooding. Oh, man, let's hope this doesn't happen. If you want to not have the flooding, you want Hurricane Ian to move quickly. But again, if it does drag as it comes ashore, these rainfall rates could be insane. Look at the difference, too, between 4 inches in Cape Coral and 53 inches in Sarasota. I mean, come on, I've heard of liquid sunshine, but that's just insane. Obviously, there's a moderate flood risk. This is going to become a high as time goes by, and this will extend all the way into Friday. This is going to be a weekend ordeal for Florida. Here's another look at the radar, and there's that tornado watch box. We have a high threat of tornadoes. People always forget, with landfalling hurricanes, you get tornadoes any time of day or night, water spouts, and some of them could be rain-wrapped tornadoes, which make them harder to see. There's a very foreboding radar image. It's very reminiscent of Hurricane Charlie. For those of us old-timers who were tracking back in 2004, let me tell you, back in 2004, we were blown away by Charlie. Hopefully this is not another Charlie. Now, one thing we didn't have to deal with Charlie that we might have to deal with this thing is storm surge potential. 8 to 12 feet between Longboat Key and Bonita Beach. Areas of Tampa Bay, 5 to 8 feet. Now, it's changed. It's less for Tampa because they were forecasting you guys to be on the right side with that onshore flow. But now that the hurricane's probably going to make landfall south of Tampa, you guys won't be getting that onshore flow, but you're still going to have a water rise. And again, areas there are very susceptible. This is a storm surge graphic. Now, this is from the National Hurricane Center website. Now, this is an intertidal layer, so anything in gray is kind of where you could have tidal differences. I'm going to take that off and show you the potential water rise here. This is, red is up to 9 feet of water rise or more. Areas there of Port Charlotte, Cape Coral, you guys are at risk. Sanibel Island, you could have 6 to 9 feet. You could be covered. Captiva, Pine Island Sound, these barrier islands. And then further to the north here, areas of Venice, Longboat Key, Sarasota, and then of course Tampa Bay, very susceptible. But again, we just don't know where the direct center is going to hit. So if the eye of the hurricane makes landfall over Cape Coral, you're going to have a high storm surge here in Marco and Naples and Cape Sable. Whereas if it makes landfall over Tampa, you'll have a higher storm surge up Charlotte Harbor, or if it makes landfall down in Sarasota. So there's a lot of variables at play, and that's why we're going to have to watch it so much. There's a look at the synoptic flow there as we have the trough picking up the hurricane. Beautiful. I mean, this is a beautiful shot. Look at it. Feels like fall all the way down to the Gulf Coast as this troughiness has picked up the hurricane, and it's going to drag it into landfall there and then up the coastline as a very, very dangerous storm. The key messages for Hurricane Ian: life-threatening storm surge, hurricane winds, mudslides continue for western Cuba today. Devastating wind damage near the core. Remember, this came ashore as a high-end Category 3 over those tobacco fields of western Cuba. They got slammed. Number 2, life-threatening surge looks increasingly likely for much of the Florida West Coast. There's a storm surge warning in effect there along the west coast of Florida, including areas from the Florida Keys, the Ocala River, Suwannee River, mouth of St. Mary's River to the South Santee River, all along the coastlines. And the highest risk is from Fort Myers to the Tampa Bay region. Residents need to listen to their local officials. Hurricane force winds are expected in that warning area in west central Florida beginning tomorrow morning. Residents should rush all preparations to completion today. And finally, heavy rainfall will increase across the Florida Keys and South Florida today, and we could have considerable flash urban small stream flooding all the way through the weekend, and that could even head into southern Georgia and coastal South Carolina and central Florida, major river flooding. So this is a bad mess. So I'm Mike Naso with the latest on Hurricane Ian, a dangerous major hurricane. It is leaving Cuba, and it is on track now for southwest Florida. We're going to continue to zero in on it with frequent coverage here on our YouTube page. Stay tuned.